And welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter, people who matter. And today I don't have a guest, so I am back to doing the Facebook Live. And by the way, thank you to the people who recently have told me they watch my Facebook Lives. Thanks. I appreciate that. I never really know if people are here or if I'm talking to myself, and we use it later for the podcast. So it's kind of cool to know that there are some people out there who watch it live, even if you don't interact, and watch it later. So thanks for that. Today, I wanted to talk about connecting the dots. I remember, probably many more people have said this than the place I remember it, but the first time I remember hearing that you can only connect the dots of your life looking backward was from Steve Jobs. And I think about Steve Jobs in his life. I did listen to the 20 CDs at the time of his biography by, I think it was Isaacson. And that was a lot of CDs and a long biography, but it was really interesting because if he really believes that you can only connect the dots of your life looking backward, that would probably have given him a lot of insight into his own life at the time. And I'm thinking about that now as I ponder at the end of this year. I kind of do this at the end of every year, but at the end of this year, what did this year teach me? And looking back on this year, I can go back beyond this year, and I can look at all the seemingly random events that happened in my life to make me who I am and really connect those dots. The more work I do on myself, the more awareness I have of how I show up in the world, the more I realize that there were a lot of things that had to happen in a certain sequence for me to be who I am today. And so, as I'm thinking about that today, and I'm just kind of pondering that, I recognize a lot of things. Random, I put up air quotes, random events that seem to happen for no specific reason. Looking back, I think, oh, that's why I chose that. Oh, that's why that didn't work out. Oh, that's why that person, showed up in my life. And it's so interesting because I recognize now, in this part of my life, that I probably have always been an optimist. And as an optimist, I too have had my heart broken many times because I just always believe people are doing the best they can with what they know. And it used to occur to me that everybody knew what I knew. And so I just made assumptions like, oh, people are knowing what I know. People are having the opportunities I'm having. And it just didn't really occur to me that that wouldn't be true, or it might not be true. And so as I think back on the life journey, the choices I've made along the way, I really see how grateful I am for everything. Things that worked out, things that didn't work out, because it's put me here. And I suppose looking back, any of us looking back on our lives, we could have a lot of regrets, or we might not. If we look back now on who we've become, let's just say who we are, everybody right now listening to this now or later, thinking about that for yourself, where you are right now. You could have a lot of regrets, or you could say, everything brought me right here. And the cool thing about awareness, and I always call it coming above the line. Remember, the above the line is conscious, according to the 15 commitments of conscious leadership. When we come above the line and we become conscious about our place in the world, we are open, curious, and committed to learning, as opposed to being unconscious, below the line, closed, defensive, and committed to being right. Whatever has brought you here to this conversation right now, today, with me, whether it's live or later, is because of something that had to work out. And when I think about my life, I don't dwell on the regrets for things that haven't worked out the way I wish they would have, because they've made me who I am today. And I really appreciate who I am today. Sure, there are things I'd like to be different. I'd like to have thinner thighs. I want to make a commitment to myself in 2026 to finally get into better physical condition. So that will be something on my list. For some reason, for whatever reason, I haven't made that a priority, and I don't know. It is what it is. And I can change my mind. That's the beauty of this journey we're on when we get out of victim thinking. The book that we've been reading in a couple of my groups right now is The Falling Upward by Richard Rohr. And I know I've talked about that before. That book really made it clear that there's, at least in the way Richard Rohr is talking about it, that there's a first half and a second half of our lives. And in the first half of our lives, we operate as if we are invincible. We hustle and grind. We don't think beyond necessarily the moment. And then at some point something shifts. It doesn't have to be a chronological thing. It doesn't have to be when you hit a certain age, you automatically shift into the second half. It can happen at different times. And I think I fell upward sooner than a lot of people around me in the course of my whole entire life. And if you've known me for a long time, you probably recognize this too in looking back on who I've been in the world. I've been a frustrated person most of my life because I thought I was doing it wrong, because I didn't have a lot of people I knew who were in this wonder ponder phase or stage, or maybe not even a phase or stage. It's just who we've been being, who I was. My computer just glitched out for a second. In that awareness of looking back and going, I've always been curious. I've always been someone who wants to know the why of things, and there hasn't always been a space for that. By the way, my computer's still glitching. So perhaps you are seeing me or not, or I'm getting jerky. It could be because it's looking that way on my end. But I'll just keep going, and this is what it is to be real. This is what it is to just go with the flow. Looking back, I've been curious. I've been I'm gonna say chastised, but that's not the right word. I don't know. I'm people occurred differently for me, and I think when I look at it as for me, that's different than to me, and that awareness has come with the studies I've done, the trainings I've been part of, the career paths I've made, the relationships I've been involved with or not, and all of that has made me who I am. And that's true for all of us if we're aware of it. If we are stuck in victim thinking, we won't be in accountable thinking. There are two different ways of being, victim or accountable. And when we are victim, we see that things happen to us, and we blame our circumstances for things. And when we do that, that isn't the best way for us. When I look at my life from today forward, it's very different than when I look at my life right now when I look backward. Because it can be easy to fall into that victim mode when we are a victim of our circumstances. But what we forget when that's how we have become, because we've done it over and over again and we've kind of become that person, we forget that we always have choice. We always have choices. They may not be easy choices. They may not be, the best choices. We do have choices, however. And so I've been thinking about some of the books that I've read, some of the books that seemed random, that seemed to come to me randomly, have built up this understanding that I have for choosing to be accountable, choosing to be what Bob Chapman is calling responsible for the freedom I choose. He calls it responsible freedom because accountability has a kind of a bad rap. What if we became responsible for the freedom we wanted in our lives? And at work we said, I'm going to do what it takes to be responsible with the freedoms. And that could be freedom to do things I want to do, or freedom from oppression or tyranny. I'm very careful when I'm talking about this because I understand that not every single human in the world has had the same opportunity I have. I understand that, and it's hard to know what to do with that because there will always be somebody telling me I should do it differently. You should feel differently about that. You should be grateful. You should, I don't know, should. There are a lot of shoulds. And I understand my privilege. And with that, I feel some responsibility to move forward in a different way than I might if I didn't recognize my privilege and my responsibility. So, in that space, going forward, I'm really excited for what 2026 will unfold for me because it's for me instead of to me. It changes a lot of things. It changes how I show up. It changes how I share my wisdom and knowledge. It changes how confident I am in what I know I know. And when I stay above the line, open, curious, committed to learning, it helps me stay conscious so that I don't fall below the line as much as I might if I didn't know that distinction. We all fall below the line. It's just where we choose to spend most of our time. Do we want to build a house down there? I don't. I'd rather be above the line because below the line is closed, defensive, and committed to being right. And there will always be somebody to show me that distinction because people are showing us all the time who they are. We just need to pay attention. And as the Four Agreements says, don't take anything personally. And I will add, unless it's yours to own. Because sometimes people are delivering messages, and if it hits, I need to take it personally in some way. I need to say, ooh, that one was for me. What can I learn from that? That's a way to stay in curiosity so you don't get furious. Stay curious so you don't get furious. And when things want to pull you below the line where you feel, because I know that feeling, I feel it in my jaw first. When I feel that feeling, the first question I ask myself is, or there are two, what is this here to teach me and what else could this mean? What is this here to teach me that my jaw got tight and I fell below the line and got defensive, closed, and committed to being right? When that happens, I ask myself, what is this here to teach me? Or what else could this mean? It doesn't necessarily mean something personal to me. It doesn't have to if it's not my message, if it's not something that I still need to work on. And the beauty for me, I guess, in that is that the more I study myself, the more I understand about myself, the fewer little things bug me like they used to. I have more things to be concerned about. I'm not going to say worry. To be concerned about, to be concerned for, to move forward with. And I see this all by looking backward and noticing where those dots connected. Why did I have to go through that? Why did I choose that? What was that here to teach me? And all of that is such a fun puzzle to put together. Because when we are responsible for our own freedoms, and when we are, I'll say accountable, when we are accountable for the choices we made and the choices we will make, in the present, everything looks way more doable, way more, let's say, way less overwhelming. Because in the moment, I have access to a whole lot of information in form and inspiration in spirit if I just remember. If I just go there in my mind or go there in my heart or my soul or my spirit and just either lean on a power greater than I or remember. Just remember what I know, what I know I know. And in that space, things just seem possible. There's a whole lot of possibility in that. And so I tell you all this because Chris and I are working on our book, and I think we've made some progress over the last couple of weeks that feels very, I was going to say breakthrough-ish. It kind of does, though, for us in our collaboration. The fourth root of the book we're working on is expansive collaboration. And we recognize that the challenges we've had in coming to some sort of agreement with the way this book is going to be written have come because we've actually been living out these four roots that we're writing about. And the four roots are embodied conviction, empathetic connection, emergent conversation, and eventually expansive collaboration. So those are the four roots that are going to be in the book that we're writing about culture. And culture could be organizational, it could be individual. You know, what is the culture? What is the energy? What is the feeling I have about the life I'm living even when I don't recognize it? It's there. It's always there. Even if I don't call it out, even if I don't acknowledge it, it's still there. It's this essence, this presence that creates the space or constricts the space where I can do my best work, my best living, bring my best self, live my best life. All of those are kind of dependent on the awareness of the energy around me, the culture. That's how we define the culture. Culture is agnostic. It doesn't mean anything. It's not right, wrong, good, bad. Culture doesn't show up when things are good and go away when things are bad. That's not what culture is. Culture is what it is. It's the energy and feeling all the time. And sometimes we acknowledge it, sometimes we don't. And it's not what we say it is. It's not what we call it. It's not our values on the wall. That's not culture. What we're I was going to say wrestling with, exploring, is what this means for organizations and individuals in those organizations. And if the individuals in those organizations work on themselves and their own understanding and their own responsible freedom, I suppose, their own accountability to what they bring to the space, it can be a fun experiment. If we don't recognize it and don't want to come above the line and don't have any need to be conscious of what we're up to, it might not be as exciting and fun. Because then it'll feel like things are happening to you. And then it'll feel like you have no agency in your own life. And I just want to remind you that if you look back on all of the dots that you could connect that brought you right here where you are, you could either say, "Ha, this is awesome," or you could say, "Huh, isn't that interesting that this is where I've gotten because of the choices I made?" That also means that coming above the line, becoming conscious, there's a whole lot of opportunity going forward if you recognize that you are in charge of the choices you make. And it's very simple to fall below the line and say, "I don't have any choices." I don't. And again, going back to my privilege, I get it. I feel like I have a lot of choices. You might not feel like that. There might be extenuating circumstances that you might say, "Jodee, what you're saying is a bunch of hooey because it's not true." Okay, I'm sharing my experience here in this emergent conversation, and I'm open and curious and committed to learning about what it is that would add to that experience for me. Tell me more. I'm curious, I'm open, and I would love it if we could have more conversations that are like this, emergent, not ones that say, "You're stupid, this is dumb, you're wrong, if you believe that, you're something else," because I might be. I completely could be wrong about all of this. So if you could help me understand how I'm wrong, that would be a really cool opportunity to come together and connect. But when you tell me I'm wrong and stupid and dumb, I don't really have an opening. There's nowhere to go with that. Okay, I'm wrong and stupid and dumb. Implying what? That I would be smart if I changed my mind to your point of view? So let's talk about it. Tell me more. What is it about that would be helpful? That's how I want to be in the world. Open, curious, committed to learning. I don't see any point for me in my life in being demanding and telling and declaring for me or anyone else. It doesn't seem to make sense to me if what I truly desire is connection, communication, collaboration, all of those things that I really do believe are possible. And that's not for everybody. I get that. That's not for everybody. I'm not for everybody. And there are those people who are looking for these kinds of conversations, this kind of exploration of what could make us, not make us, what could allow us to be the best versions of ourselves as parents, as workers, as family members, as community members. No matter what you do in your life, you bring yourself with that. And if you have to divide yourself into all different kinds of selves, that's really confusing and a lot of work. So, what if you could integrate all the parts, all the doings of your life into one being? What if? What if? Oh, that makes me take a deep breath and put my shoulders down. Whew, and exhale a little bit. What if? What if that were possible? In that one little opening, the conversation changes. And instead of being a shut down conversation, you're dumb, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, there's a tiny little sliver of possibility. And in that possibility, the best of both of us can come into that conversation in what Napoleon Hill calls a mastermind, which is an energetic presence that is there because the two or three or however many of us have allowed it to be. We've agreed to be in a space of harmony. He calls it harmony. I call it dialogue, which is suspending previous assumptions in order to learn from and with each other. And in that space, there's so much more opportunity to learn, so many more ideas than the ones we bring in with us. Instead of just listening in a way that says, hurry up and get done so I can say what I want to say, in a space of really being present and feeling safe to ask questions like, wait a second, what? I didn't think about that. Could you tell me more about that? I'm curious about that. That opens a conversation way more than just nodding because you want to be done with the meeting. And I know, I've been there. I've been in those kinds of situations before. Stop talking so I can just leave and be done with this. I get it. What becomes available when we share our listening with people who are around us? Those are possibilities I'm willing to explore. And I'm looking forward to 2026 because I am bringing my full self to the organizations and individuals I have the privilege and pleasure of working with. So if you want any more information about this, want more opportunities to have these kinds of conversations, the Enlightened Leadership Lab on Mondays are where we explore some of this. 4 to 5 Central, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock Central, virtual. We love having these kinds of conversations, and Chris and I are learning and facilitating that group so that we can have more experiences to share in the book. The book's going to be called Roots. Watch for it in the next couple of months. We've made some great progress on it, and we're going to share with you the roots that make a culture the most viable living system so that the people inside of it can also be the most viable and living, and they can all share their best selves. So with that, find a way this week to be real. Get real with the people around you. Radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. Radical is not wild and crazy and radicalized the way the word's been hijacked lately. It means getting back to the root of yourself. Rad, root. Radish, root vegetable. So get radical by looking inside and saying, what can I learn by looking backward on my life? What are the dots that can be connected when I look back? They got me right here, and here's a pretty good place to be. Looking forward to talking more, and let me know if you have any questions or would like to chat. See you soon. Bye.